beast crazy thing. There's not much here. I'm not really seeing any strong motive on the family's part. And definitely, if they wanted to kill her, if they were that angry about it. Number one, let's not forget, Max was not dead yet.
Yeah, that's the whole problem with why she would kill herself, because Max hadn't actually died. She didn't know that he might, if he would or would not recover. She'd been told he probably wasn't, but that didn't mean he was going to. So that's you know, I mean, again, this thing is just full of so many loopy-loos.
We can do this for another hour.
We could do this for another hour, but I think we should probably just wrap it up.
I think so too.
Probably should. I'm voting suicide.
Okay, I'm voting I don't know.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so if you want to read any of the links about this story, we'll have some of that on our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. The episodes you can download and listen to them from there. You can also get merch from there. You can stream us from just about any streaming site, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes. If you're using any of those and they allow you to review, please do take the time to comment and review the show, because that helps everybody else find us. We are on social media, so we're on Reddit, we are on Twitter, and we are on Facebook with the Facebook page and the Facebook group. And of course, if you want to get in contact with us because you have thoughts on the story or you have story suggestions you'd like to send in, send us an email at thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And that is all of the good bits and pieces that we have to share. So I think that we can put a bow on this one and be done.
I agree.
And we'll talk to you guys next week.
All right, ta-ta.
Bye, guys.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply. What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Thinking Sideways, the podcast. I'm Steve, as always joined by my lovely co-hosts,
Joe.
And Devin. He was obviously talking about Devin, not Joe.
So Joe's the lovely one.
I'm the pretty one.
Man. Aw, man.
Hey, you know, I mean, you're not bad looking. I mean, don't take it too personally.
Thanks, okay.
Yeah, you're just not as pretty as me.
It's true.
Yeah,
That really went off the rails fast.
yeah I know.
Okie doke. Well, today, as always, we have another mystery to look into. And unfortunately, Joe, we are not going to solve this. I'm pretty positive right off the top.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. I think we will.
Well, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Wait, the what?
Rendlesham Forest incident?
No, you're not saying it right. The what?
I am not doing an accent.
Yeah, you have to. You have to do your best English accent.
My accents are terrible.
I know they always end up sounding Irish or Asian, and it's awesome.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Not doing it. Okay. Well, before we get into this episode, I do want to send out a thanks to Ali, who sent this in. And he sent this in months ago. And I kind of called dibs on it. But this is one of those stories that I have to sit on for a long time because there's a lot of conflicting information.
It's an unsolved mystery egg.
Well, being a UFO story, it's not just conflicting information, but also a lot of stuff gets.
There's a lot of
attached to it.
fantastic retellings,
yeah.
and so it was really.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to kind of boil things down and figure it out. But it's a great story, and I'm really glad it got sent in because I really enjoyed it once I got my head buried in and really started digging into it.
Oh, so you're an ostrich. Got it.
Wow.
What?
Okay. Well, our story takes place in England, as Devin briefly alluded to there in the beginning with her request of my terrible accents. And it's in an area called the Rendlesham Forest, which is on the east coast of England. It's, I believe, about 60 miles south of London. So it's kind of in that region. Now, before we get into the story, there's a couple of details that are important to know, which is this happened in 1980, and since 1941, the United States Air Force has had an agreement with the British government, and they maintain air bases in the UK. the number of air bases have fluctuated, but they've been going down for like 30 years. But at the time, the U.S. Air Force was using what they referred to as the twin bases. And those were Bentwaters and Woodbridge. They're about 2 miles apart. On the night of December 25th, 1980, so Christmas, which is in a couple of days, for everybody listening to this, if you listen to it when it first comes out, lights were reported in the area of Rendlesham and other places in the country. There were streaking lights in the sky.
Like meteors?
People didn't know exactly what they were at first, but they were streaking lights. That morning, the 26th of December, 1980, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and if you do the research on this gets a little confusing because you'll see the first incident reported as the 26th and the 27th, and we'll get into why that is here shortly. But strange lights were reported by the security patrols at the east gate of the RAF Woodbridge, which is the Royal Air Force Base. Evidently, these lights were descending into Rendlesham Forest, and at first the airmen thought that it was a downed airplane, but after they went to investigate it, they saw, and this is according to the official documents, a strange glowing object that was metallic in appearance with orange-colored lights. And as they approached the object, it moved through the trees, and the animals, quote, and this is a quote, the animals in the nearby farm went into a frenzy. So this is at 3 a.m. They go to check this out. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the Suffolk police are called in, and they're the local jurisdiction. And they reported that the only light that they saw in the area was from the Orford Ness Lighthouse, which is 5 miles away.
Okay.
It's actually right on the coast, obviously, because it's a lighthouse.
And being a lighthouse, its light is meant to be seen from far, far away.
Correct. Very true. In the morning, so this is in the daylight hours of the 26th of December, these airmen return to the clearing where they had seen the lights, and they find these 3 small impressions that are in kind of a triangular pattern on the ground. They also reported that there were burn marks on the trees and that there were broken branches from those trees on the ground. What they did is they took plaster casts of these impressions that they found on the ground.
Idea, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hey, this is a weird hole in the ground. Let's just take a cast of it so we know what it is.
Just pour some plaster in there, yeah.
How deep were these impressions, by the way?
They're very shallow. Very, very shallow. As a matter of fact, at like 10:30 that morning, the local police came out again to see these supposed impressions in the ground, and they were like, yeah, that's totally made by a digging animal.
Like a rabbit.
A rabbit is, they thought it was like a rabbit or something, was digging in the ground. So this happens, and then the next day, so now we move forward to the 27th of December.
Okay.
And this goes between the 27th and the 28th of December. A group of servicemen and their commanding officer, whose name is Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, they return to the site and they attempt to figure out what's going on because evidently the lights had come back. And so they go out to check it out. These lights were slightly different than the guys saw the first night because they were not only orange, there were white and blue lights as well.
Did the guys who were out that first night go out the second night too?
You know, I cannot find any description that says so. The guys that went out on the first night, they are oh gosh, what's their names? It is Peniston and Burroughs.
Okay.
I find all kinds of information about Peniston and Burroughs on the first night. I find nothing about them the second night, so I can't say. But Halt went out with a whole troop of guys.
Sure.
So they may have.
Great.
You would think the Peniston at least would have been there.
You would think that, hey, I've saw this before. You want me to go with you and see if it's the same thing?
Yeah, because of what he reports he saw, which we'll talk about a little later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd be interested in going out and seeing it again.
You would totally think so. At this point, they're they're out there, and this is where the confusion about the dates comes from, and this is all Lieutenant Colonel Halt's fault. He evidently didn't write his report for 2 weeks. So when he wrote the actual official report that he turned in, people speculate that he got the dates wrong. So he said that the first incident happened on the 27th and not the 26th. So his dates, so that's why when you read it, and I see these dates mixed up all over the place when I was researching this. Some would say it started on the 27th. Others would say it started on the 26th. So it goes back and forth.
Okay.
What Halt did, though, is when he went out into the woods, and he took all these guys with him, he also took a bunch of equipment with him. Part of that equipment was radiation detectors and big floodlights. I believe they're referred to as lightalls.
Okay.
Which I'm guessing, from what I've seen, and this is the hard part, if anybody goes out and looks this up on the internet, you're going to find a bunch of videos. One of those videos is from Unsolved Mysteries, and they show these giant generator units, but they also make a lot of claims. So I don't know exactly what kind of lighting equipment they took, but they did take big lights, supposedly, with them to kind of illuminate the area to see where they were going.
Okay.
Their radiation detectors, when they were out there, picked up radiation in those depressions that they had spotted on the morning of the 26th. And they also found radiation on the trees that were around those depressions.
Okay.
So what Halt did, and this is a little unprecedented, but actually great for this case, is he took with him a cassette recorder, that a micro cassette recorder that he was talking into the whole time, recording all of the conversations.
So, okay, wait, I'm sorry. But he got the dates wrong when he wrote his report 2 weeks later?
Evidently, he didn't say the dates. I don't remember him saying the dates, but yeah, he screwed it up.
Okay.
Maybe he just didn't listen to the tape. I don't know how he bungled this.
Okay.
The date thing.
But somehow he did.
Yeah,
Got it.
somehow he did. The great thing is that tape is out there, and anybody can listen to it. It's on YouTube. And it's transcribed, so you can find that. I've listened to some of it. It's a bunch of dudes walking in the woods talking, so it's kind of hard to follow, but he did that, which is really great.
But was there anything significant? Did he say, like...
Well, they talk and they describe as they're seeing these lights, which is interesting, and it actually comes up when we get into some of the descriptions and the theories as to what they might have been seeing. So it actually gives that one clue that we normally don't get when somebody says, I saw this thing in the sky and it did this. You can actually hear them talking about it and saying, I see it now, I see it now,
That's
there
helpful.
it is, there it goes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They did have a bunch of equipment problems when they were out there, though. The lightalls, those big generators on wheels with the floodlights, those things kept malfunctioning.
Weird.
And I don't know how many they took, but they died. And they were having all kinds of issues with their radios. They were getting tons of interference and static.
Wow, we get interference on work radios all the time. Totally normal.
It is not unusual, yeah.
But a lot of it is probably,
Yeah. Where Halt eventually takes his men, leads him to the edge of the forest, on the eastern edge of the forest, and in the tape you can hear him talk about, I can see it, and I see a farmhouse below us, and there's the flashing light. So he kind of gives some descriptions of where he's going as in the tape.
So they're on the edge of the forest, so they're basically
end
out
up,
of the woods?
They eventually end up on the edge of the woods, yes.
Yeah, so the light that he sees then is not in the forest, it's off in the distance or something?
That's one of the problems with this story, is you hear that the light is traveling around and through the trees just up ahead, and you hear the light is off in the far distance and moving around through the trees. So it's an issue. Very big issue with this particular story.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the correct answer is.
Yeah.
Halt and his men follow the light, and they follow the light for about an hour, at which point they say that it shot up into the sky, it was flying around, it was sending lights to the ground, and then it took off and just zipped away.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. So, this was all in his official report that he submitted?
Well, that's the great thing. They're all in the military, so they gotta write reports.
Oh, yeah.
So they all reported this, and I haven't read his report. Honestly, I listened to parts of his tape, and I listened to some of his testimony that he's given over the years. He says that it went up into the sky. He says they were following it. He lists off on the tape. You can hear him talking about the radiation and calling out the levels that they're picking up, which are really small levels of radiation. But he calls these things out. So he's calling out all this stuff as he's going along. But I don't know exactly where he ended up, and I don't know exactly what was in his report. But he is supposed to have put all this in the report. That's the bare bones version of the story. This, as any potential UFO story, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, grows and changes and evolves.
Yeah, that's why I often steer away from UFO stories, because they're just...
They're hard.
So
that's part of the reason I sat on this so long, is I had to work through all these variants of the story. I mean, these guys, they seem to truly believe that they saw some kind of craft of unknown origin, and the Ministry of Defense, the MOD, or the MOD as people refer to it, got involved because it was on British soil.
And on a base, a military base.
Yeah. Well, technically, the jurisdiction of the U.S. Air Force ended at the gates of the base. So when they were out in the woods, they couldn't take guns or anything like that because they were on UK soil. So when all this happened, technically they were on UK soil, not American soil. So they're the ones who have the file about the incident. And the MOD has a file on the incident, and people have pointed to the fact that the MOD wouldn't disclose what was in that file as proof that something happened, and tell us what happened. And it's got to be real because you recorded it. And of course, the MOD just said, whatever.
There are so many reasons to not make that stuff public. I just don't even know.
Well, it might just be sheer spite, or just for the fun of it. If you got this file, you let them know there's a file. It's a fat little file, but we're not going to let you see it. And then watch them go crazy.
Yeah, man.
The other part is that the MOD works at the British business and government, mostly the British government, works at a completely different pace than what we're used to here in the States. Our government by no means moves fast, but the Brits move much slower than we do. And
That's
so
amazing.
That exacerbates...
How is that possible?
It's because they put a very old woman in charge of it. They were like, okay, Your Majesty, it's time to sign a thing. Oh, okay, after my tea, I will.
I gotta play with the dogs.
Dogs. Oh, bite this very expensive glove. Yes, it's very cute. Okay. What was I supposed to do? Oh. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
So it's the Queen.
Sorry.
To our British listeners, yes, we apologize.
I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, we like it.
Sorry.
Well, the thing about this, what makes this story so interesting to me is twofold. One is, like I said just before, is how it's evolved and grown as all of these UFO-based stories do. And then what's even crazier to me is how the stories of the individuals who were involved in it have just continued to grow and expand. And I want to go through two of those.
Okay.
I want to go through what I consider one of the most fantastical versions of this story that I found on the net. And then I want to go through some of the stuff that is put out there by one of the men involved. So the first that we're going to start with is the net.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aliens.
Yes, absolutely. Remember we talked about the two guys that went out on the first night? It was Peniston and Burroughs? Okay. According to this story, after they chased the object through the forest, they were able to get up close with it, and they saw that it was a craft that was triangular in shape, so basically a little pyramid.
Sure.
It's that kind of shape.
Listen, aliens.
Yes, absolutely. They, according to this, saw small-bodied, large-headed beings suspended from the bottom of the craft by some kind of beam.
So they were underneath the car working on it?
Yeah, they were working on the craft, And they didn't care that these silly humans were standing around staring at them.
Why should they? I mean, they've got a killer bot in their spaceship that's going to like vaporize them. It's close and threatening.
Yeah. More U.S. airmen arrived, and this is supposedly unofficially reported that the people who ventured close to this craft encountered strange anomalies. And,
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Those included reality-bending effects, excuse me,
I experience those all the time.
Yeah.
time
Whenever I drink.
displacement,
That
and
too.
surreal atmospheric conditions.
I'm experiencing that right now.
Don't even get that.
Does it matter? Do you have to get it?
No. This craft supposedly appeared from a type of low-flying clouds.
Low-lying cloud?
Did I say flying?
Yeah, you said
yeah.
flying.
It's
I mean,
a low-lying cloud.
technically, it was
Technically, a cloud is flying. So I was
Okay.
right. I was totally right there.
Okay.
A low-lying cloud. And these same reports say that senior men of the group were able to approach and communicate with the aliens.
But only the senior members of the group.
Well, aliens understand military hierarchy.
Of course, they
Well-
understand hierarchy of all kinds.
Yeah,
course.
they're stuck up. Aliens are stuck up. They don't want to talk to a mere enlisted man.
Right.
Yeah.
Only colonels
Yeah.
and lieutenants. For
Probably
them.
not even
colonels.
lieutenants.
Or lieutenant colonels. Or, dogs.
Dogs?
I don't know. The dogs might be in charge. You don't know.
True.
Cats might be in charge. You don't know.
That's the great thing. Can we diverge for a second? An alien comes to this planet. I think we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
How do they know who's in charge? They may be considering this planet just rife with bright minds. And they happen to be furry and sleep a lot and have tails because they think the cats are the most intelligent species on this planet. We don't know.
Yeah.
Well-
If they observed us, they would notice that the cats get taken care of. The people
We serve them.
we serve them. Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
apparently, they must be in charge, right?
Exactly. This is why there's so many cat videos on the internet. It's the aliens. Okay, well, back to another version that I found.
Uh-oh.
And it says that the object that Peniston and Burroughs saw, it was metallic in appearance, and again, triangular in shape.
That seems to be a constant, right?
In this story, it is.
Okay.
It is in this 2 to 3 meters across at the base, and it illuminated the entire forest in white light and had a pulsing red light at the top and a series of blue lights on its bottom.
Oh, so it was a cop car.
It was basically an alien
Got
cop
it. Okay,
car.
sure, yeah.
And yet another version says that on the second night, so this is the night that Halt and his men went out, a unnamed female base security officer and her partner went out to investigate the mysterious lights, and they were following it in their car when the craft shot a beam of light at their vehicle, which deactivated it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's alien LoJack.
No.
Totally shut that thing down.
No.
No?
No.
Oh, you're just no fun. Come on.
No, actually, our military is working on a similar thing, which is a directed EMP pulse, and so maybe that's what it was. Of course, what I want to know is, did they get it towed back to the base, like the mechanics, and then the mechanics look at it and determine that the electronics have been fried? Yeah.
I found nothing else about that particular section, this last bit.
So you're thinking it might be
Nothing.
made up? That's not possible.
No, I know it's hard to believe,
It's
but
on
possible.
the internet. It must be true.
It must be true.
Absolutely.
Now let's go to the version of the story that is told by Peniston. Peniston and Burroughs have both over time expounded on their story, but I'm just going to focus on one of them just to try and keep this as close as possible, because otherwise this will sprawl and just get out of hand.
Hey, by the way, is there a wiki for this Peniston guy? Does he have a wiki page or not?
No, there's no actual wiki page for him.
Yeah.
It's just part of the...
He's just part of the Rendlesham Forest incident wiki in general and all the other articles that you'll find out there on the net. Now, again, just to back up, this is his full title at the time was Sergeant Jim Peniston, and he said that it was a craft of unknown origin.
Which is fair.
And he also he says that in his report he wrote detailed notes about the features of the craft, and he touched its surface and it was warm, and that surface was covered in
hieroglyphics,
kind of hieroglyphic
Symbols.
shapes.
Now,
yeah.
and now, like, let's get this straight. So, the way I read the story is he had a pad and a pencil, and on the spot, and
Yes.
they made detailed sketches and notes and everything.
Well, I mean that I'm not concerned about that. I mean, like a little pocket notebook and a pencil, like you would have that if you were out on duty. I have a notebook and a pencil in my purse right now. I mean, I'm not concerned about like the convenience of him having a notebook.
Yeah, he just happens to have a notepad with him. But,
I mean, that makes sense to me. I know plenty of
possible.
people who just carry notepads with them. Yeah,
And
especially if you're in uniform and you've got lots of pockets.
yeah.
he supposedly did these drawings and he turned them in with his report.
Okay, which is in the possession of the...
U.S. Air Force.
Oh, it's not the Brits?
No. Technically, he is still a U.S. serviceman. He still reports to the U.S.
I see.
So
Okay.
they maintain all of it from him.
Okay.
Okay, well, according to Peniston's version of it, as he and John Burroughs, that's the other guy, went into the forest, and there's a third airman listed in his version by the name of Edward Cabansag?
That's how I would say it.
I hope that's how you say it.
It could be Kabansag.
Could be.
I don't know.
Well, it's really easy because this guy disappears from the story from this point forward.
Okay.
Like, you never hear mention of him again.
He was an alien.
Yeah, thank God. Farewell, Mr. Unpronounceable last name.
As they walk into the woods to investigate the light that they're seeing, they saw a 9-foot by 6-foot triangular craft with swirling yellow and blue lights hovering, they say, 2 feet off the ground approximately. Supposedly they could both feel static in the air.
That's not weird.
No, not weird at all.
No, I mean, like, it's not, though.
It's
like,
not totally unusual.
walk
no.
outside right now. Like, I'm just saying.
But their radios were malfunctioning, according to his version of the events.
Okay,
so
that is
might,
weird.
That might be related to it.
That's weird.
And after they observed the craft for about 10 minutes, they decided that it didn't pose any threat, and they decided to approach it. They got close to it, and this is where they could see those hieroglyphic symbols that were etched into the exterior of the ship. And then at some point, not too long after that, the ship suddenly emitted an explosion of light that knocked all of them off their feet.
Cool.
And I've seen that listed as anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to 45 minutes. The time that they were just chilling, checking it out, copying notes about it, could have been anywhere from 5 minutes to 45.
Well, didn't they say earlier that, like, one of the side effects of being near the craft was, like, time distortion? So it's possible that, like, they didn't know.
That is true.
It's also, it's also possible that, like, I have a really horrible sense of time. Like, if you were like, hey, how long were you standing in the kitchen?
3 o'clock in the morning.
I could not tell you. You know, I could be like, well, it wasn't a half an hour, probably, but it might have been. I don't know. I mean, that there are people like that.
It's absolutely valid.
Yeah.
Peniston also claims to have seen triangular landing gear on the craft.
That's a mouthful.
Mates up with this thing where when they went into the woods in the morning and they found those that triangular shaped set of impressions.
Yeah,
in
but
the
I
ground.
guess the question I would have is like, when did he report that? Like, did he report that before the halt incident where they saw those things and he was like, oh, that's weird because I saw a landing gear that looked like that.
Halt is like a day later.
Right, but when did when was that reported? Was that reported?
That was it was in the initial reports.
Oh, okay.
So, because remember, they went out at about 3 o'clock in the morning. The local cops come out at about 4, and then they go back out in the daylight morning hours, and then the cops come out at 10:30 again to check out this set. So this is all in that first morning of all this event.
That's when he wrote this report?
Correct.
Okay, and this is from that report? It's not from him, like, later, like, quote-unquote, remembering?
It's not from the report. It's from what he has written and said he saw. Because this is his story, and what we're hearing now is the most evolved version of his story.
Okay, great, awesome.
So that's the hard part.
Let's just remind that, right? Because that, for me, it's like, okay, so like he's recalling 10 years later what he